But my heart has always been the same. To every man that sits in my chair, I will give them the best. I will serve them the best that I can in the time that they have with me. And that's either giving them a good haircut or just making them feel seen and heard or acknowledged.
This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Kia ora, welcome to another episode of Down to Earth Conversations with me, Andy Dixon. To those of you who are here for the first time, no mai, you are so welcome. And to those who have been with me for a while, thank you for your ongoing support. We've just finished Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, a.k.a. Māori Language Week. It's also 1 year since my conversation with the amazing Kat Poi came out, titled Courageous Conversations About Race, which is still one of my most listened to episodes. If you haven't heard it, definitely go check it out. That wahine toa is incredible and brings such passion and wisdom to the race conversation. Today we hit the third of a Tangata Moana lineup that started in episode 34 with Dietrich Sorkai and continued last time with Courtney Manu. Both had such powerful things to say, so if you haven't listened to them, it's definitely worth your time. Although, of course, I would say that about all of my guests. Today we hear from Mataio Faafetai Malietoa Brown, a.k.a. Matt Brown, well known for his business My Fathers Barbers and for the global movement that he started with his wife Sarah, She Is Not Your Rehab, inviting men into a journey of healing and wholeness. Before I get into it, I want to acknowledge here that last week Matt lost a very close friend to cancer, Mark Tuffer. Matt and all those who are grieving, we acknowledge your loss and we stand with you in your grief. Aroha nui ki a koe, Matt. There was a beautiful article on Stuff that you can find on my Facebook page that shares about Mark's life. And in many ways, Mark represents much of the conversation that Matt and I have in today's episode, and much of what Matt and Sarah are all about. Matt and Sarah recently released the best-selling book titled She Is Not Your Rehab, unpacking the kaupapa of the movement with insights from Matt's journey and their journey together. I can't recommend this book highly enough. As you'll hear me say in the interview, I gained so much from it for myself, even with a totally different upbringing than Matt. So it was such a privilege to kōrero with Matt and to talk about hair art, barbershops, vulnerability, anger, healing, empathy, doing the internal mahi, and so much more. This is episode 36 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Mataio Brown. Kia ora, Matt Brown. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
Why don't we just start with no hair queer? Who are you, bro? Where are you from?
Matt Brown is my name, or my official name is Mataio Faafetai Malietoa Brown. And I suppose I went with Matt Brown because my teachers in school found it hard to pronounce my name. And so I've always been known as Matt Brown. I reside currently in Ōtautahi in Christchurch, but I was born in South Auckland, Mangere to be exact. My parents immigrated from Samoa in the 60s, and so me and my siblings were all raised here, so born and raised here.
Now, I first heard of you a number of years ago when you posted some images of some hair art that you'd done, and particularly the first one that I saw was a recreation of Da Vinci's The Last Supper that you did on someone's head.
Oh, cool.
How do you get into that sort of thing? Like, is there classes, or did you just pick it up, or how does that work?
Nah, I seen on YouTube, it would have been over a decade ago, I seen some barbers, they did like a portrait of Michael Jordan and his 5 rings on someone's head, and that just fascinated me. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I got into barbering, was the creative and the artistic side of it.
Yeah.
And so, I attempted my first portrait, which was Tupac, my favorite rapper. And I uploaded that onto Facebook. This was going just after 2010. I uploaded that onto Facebook, 2012, sorry. And the official Tupac page shared that photo, my era. And that went nuts. It went crazy. And all of this attention and fame came my way. And I was like, I thought I was that man.
Yeah. So were there precursors to that of a whole lot of guys wandering around with like really ugly portraits on the back of their head from you practicing, or was it just like you started and found that you were actually just pretty good at it?
Yeah, nah, just I took my time. It's to create something like that takes detail and precision.
Yeah.
But it would take that Tupac image took me 2 hours. But now today I could jam that out in 10 minutes.
Right.
So
Well.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
it does practice makes you better. It doesn't make you perfect.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there were heaps of like horrible portraits walking around. I did
Yeah.
fail once on my daughter though. She had the shaved part on the side of her head, and she asked me for a portrait of Beyonce, and that horrifically ended up looking like Jesus. Oh
Yeah. Not the same thing.
no, not the same thing.
Awesome. And so I mean, you were actually trained as a joiner, like you were working as a joiner before going full time with your barbering. What was it like leaving something that was stable for this dream that you had?
It was scary. Well, the thing was, I got into joinery. I was going to go to college, to university, but I decided to take a year break. And so I went and worked with my friends at this joinery job, and I fell in love with it. I'm naturally an introvert, so I just like keeping to myself. And there's a creative outlet to it. You could build things and create. Making things. So I just fell in love with it and obviously got my trade in there and loved it. And it was a stable job. I was getting paid well, and then I just wanted to do more in life, and I always wanted to do something that helped with men's mental health. Especially coming from my background of abuse, violence, and a lot of my boys were, joining gangs, becoming incarcerated, addicted, selling, and I just wanted to speak into that area, talk to guys with real struggles and real troubles, and I was always obviously attracted to barbering or the hairdressing world because of the black culture, like hip hop. Hip hop was something that really resonated with me as a kid, and it almost like saved my life. Music, the culture of hip hop, and yeah, I was attracted to these rappers and famous singers on TV who had these cool as hairstyles, and I wanted to I suppose recreate those same hairstyles in my neighborhood. And yeah, it was scary leaving joinery, but I knew I wanted to do something with men, and so I started cutting up my boys in my neighborhood, just in my backyard before I had a little garden tin shed. And it was in these conversations that I started having with these men, and obviously guys said, I was giving a good haircut, but they were coming back for more than just a haircut. And so that's when I decided to leave my joinery job, my trade, and commit to becoming a full time barber. And it
Mm,
was scary. It was scary, but yeah, I suppose word of mouth has helped my business grow. One, you do a good haircut, that guy's going to tell three other people.
yeah,
You do a horrible haircut, you know, he's going to tell 20 people, don't go to that guy.
yeah,
And then so I was just lucky I had the time to hone my craft in my backyard, which eventuated to a tin shed. And people just, I suppose, spread the news. There's a barber cutting in the hood
yeah.
in his garden tin shed, and that's how the business grew, really.
And like you say, that it's been more than about haircutting right from the start.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's something that's really obvious when you go to your barber shop now, is that the way that all your barbers connect with one another and with the clients. It's obvious that you've put that spin in for them as well, that you haven't just brought them on board to show them how to do hair. You're helping them to be that person as well that can chat to men and be in that space.
Yeah, definitely.
What's that been like, sort of taking on those apprentices of getting these other guys doing what you love to do?
It's something I really enjoy is teaching and helping the next generation to to have these conversations, because our mental health system is struggling at the moment. And if we whatever job you're in, or business, or environment you're in, if you can hold a space or create an environment where people can actually talk and open up, then I, I just think more power to you. And in the heart of our business is always been connection.
Yeah,
You look at any business, it's how do you connect with. the people, the
Yeah.
community, the buyers. And so I pride myself in having conversations, like asking the right questions, because so many people out there, especially men, are struggling silently, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to talk to someone, but it's hard because if you open up about certain topics, or no one wants to talk about shame, or how do you
Yeah.
even begin that conversation with, having experienced shame in your childhood, or grief, or disappointment.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I pride myself in the ability to have these conversations and
Mm.
teaching barbers. People come to the barber shop wanting to learn how to cut hair, but they eventually learn, oh, this is more than just cutting hair.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're talking to people and holding space for guys that actually open up about things that they don't really talk about.
And you've also used it as a chance to give guys a go who other people wouldn't give the time of day, haven't you? There's guys that have experienced prison that become barbers in your barber shop.
Yes, I always just think I never hire people on talent. I prefer character. I think I can teach anyone how to cut hair. It's having the right attitude, and you know, being resilient and showing up to work on time. Like, those are the things that
Mm.
I'm more interested in teaching
Mm.
and helping nurture. And so, yeah, some of these guys that whom society does not give a second chance to, or deem as the worst in our society. I've always had a thing for the underdog,
Mm.
helping people out that people just deem not worth it. And so, yeah, the guys that have come out of prison and I've given jobs to have remained outside of prison, have remained on this side of the wire,
Yeah.
which
Cool.
is also an awesome thing to do. And the reason why we do it is because a lot of these men who do come from prison, they have children waiting for
Yeah.
them at home. And and I was that kid myself that would go and visit my father in prison, and hoping every time that dad came out of prison, he would be better. He'll come out as a better man. Um, Unfortunately, that wasn't always the case for us, which led us, staying in every woman's refuge home here in Christchurch. And so part of it is redeeming my story, my childhood, that these kids who are waiting for their parents to come out of prison, um, that they're more equipped with the right tools and the right insights to be more present for their children,
Yeah.
more loving to their partners, and just making something better for themselves and changing that narrative. And so, yeah, always keen to give someone a chance if they're willing and if
Yeah.
their attitude and they want to grow. Not so much they so egotistical and they want to be the best barber and the best
Mm.
cutting hair. Like, awesome, but I more want to focus on people's character.
Yeah. In your book, you tell a story about a guy who came and talked to you, and by the end of the conversation, you found out that actually he was coming to get his hair done for his funeral. And because of the conversation you had with him, he decided it was worth living.
Mm.
Those moments where you find that point of connection must be really rewarding for what it was that you hoped to do when you set out.
It's always it's beautiful. Always a reminder of why I started. Why I left my joinery job and took a chance and dived into barbering. And I didn't go to school and learn it. I learned through YouTube videos, and then I learned from watching other barbers in their barbershops. And so, but my heart has always been the same. To every man that sits in my chair, I will give them the best. I will serve them the best that
Mm.
I can in the time that they have with me. And
Mm.
that's either giving them a good haircut or just making them feel seen and heard or
Yeah.
acknowledged. And I think we live in a society that's so fast. People judge your connection on how fast your Wi-Fi is.
Yeah.
But the rat race is so fast, and how many of us actually get a chance to sit down and just talk
Mm.
to another person. And that's one thing why I refuse to have TVs in my barbershop or games, because I just want to get back to that conversation, kanohi ki te kanohi, face to face, real connection. If people want to watch sports and talk about sports, like, go to the pub. There's a pub right across our barbershop, but in this barbershop we're going to talk. We're going to talk about hard things, not necessarily all the time. I think that's a bit over the
Yeah.
extra if you're always talking about hard things, but the opportunity's there.
Yeah.
If someone is struggling with their mental health, like, come and talk to your barber. We're cheaper than a therapist.
Mm.
A lot of our people can't afford therapists. For a guy who's struggling with his mental health, $120 to see a therapist or $120 to pay the bills, buy groceries to feed my family.
Yeah.
They're going to choose that over going to see a therapist. And so I don't say we don't replace therapy, but I think we're a first step
Mm-hmm.
in the right direction. We're cheaper, and sometimes we will be the best that some of these guys will want to go to.
Mm.
So
Is half of it just being a good listener?
yep, that's it. Being a good listener. I always say that the secret to connection is actually just listening. Never ever is it about you giving the right answer or you saying the right things, trying to fix things. It's really just listening and holding that space. But the thing is, we feel so awkward if we can't help, and then we start making it about ourselves, like, oh, I feel useless. I'm not a good friend. I'm not a good person because I didn't give this guy good advice. But the best thing we can always do is actually just listen and show empathy. Yeah.
Just over 2 years ago now, you spoke at TedX in Christchurch, and that kind of birthed this whole movement that you've called She Is Not Your Rehab. What's this last 2 years been like for you?
Man, it's been a wild ride. It's been humbling to see the conversation just tackling hard topics like shame and vulnerability amongst the culture of men, but then also family harm, talking about subjects that are often labeled taboo. It's been awesome because people are having these hard conversations, not just in our barber shop, but with each other in relationships. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about with our kaupapa, our movement, is leaning into the discomfort, having conversations that we've never had or encouraged, or is not your
Yeah.
typical conversations. And so it's been awesome just how it's reached worldwide now. A lot of
Yeah.
people have asked me to come speak. Obviously, because of COVID, I can't travel. We're stuck here in New Zealand, so I've done a lot of Zooms, international conferences, and just talking. And I never thought that I would be in this position. Coming from a garden tin shed, and all my heart was always just to hold space for men and have these conversations. And now it's turned into this global movement. It's very, very humbling.
Do you still get to do the barbershop?
It's taken me out of the barbershop, to be honest. So I hardly see my clients these days. So I don't really cut new people. I've got my regular clients, but all my regular clients understand I'm a busy man, and
Yeah.
if I have to cancel on them because I've got something on, they feel sad, but
Yeah.
they understand. So
Yeah. Your own life has been the catalyst for a lot of this passion to help others. Your childhood was traumatic, to say the least. At what point did you decide that sharing your own story was something that was going to be beneficial for others?
I've been sharing my story since I was 15. I left home at 15, and I started in school first. I started, in school you do speeches,
Mm.
and I remember doing my speech, and I won. I came first, but all I shared was my story of overcoming domestic violence,
Well,
and the amount of peers that came up to me at school and talked about they were going through the same thing at home.
wow.
They were experiencing the same thing. Was that was probably my first. That was probably the first time I put light onto what sharing my story can do. And these were kids that didn't look like me. Growing up in Christchurch, it's predominantly Pakia, European white people. And so these guys, I'm thinking they had it all together at school, and they had the life, and I'm at home. My normality is hidings and abuse and violence. When kids came up to me and were telling me that they were experiencing the same thing, it blew my mind.
Wow.
And so I've always worn my heart on my sleeve and told my story. And I share my story. I think I can. I know I can share my story because I share my story openly because I know I'm loved.
Yeah.
I know who's in my corner. I know who's sitting in my support section. But I had to do that. I had to do that work. So I left home at 15, started sharing my story, and when I left home at 15, the person that was sitting in my support section was myself. I had to show up for myself and show compassion and empathy. And I just, yeah, it's been an amazing journey. And I know that me being vulnerable and sharing my story gives other people permission to share their stories and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's the power. I've always believed Indigenous people have always healed through storytelling. through stories. That's how we heal.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of healing, when I first heard of She Is Not Your Rehab, my immediate assumption was that it was purely about stopping physical violence. And of course, that's a part of it.
Yeah.
But as I've understood more of it and as I've read your book about it, actually, you were inviting men into a journey of healing, aren't you?
Yes.
You say in your book, healing is not what happens to you, healing is what happens inside you as a result of what love does to you. Do you want to tell us a bit about that? What does that mean for you?
Well, I mean, I took that and put my own spin on it from the addiction specialist guru, who I love and adore. He's from Canada, Jewish man from Canada, Garba Mate. He says trauma isn't what happens to you, but what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. And so, yeah, I just put my spin on that. Healing obviously happens to you from what love does to you. And I just feel we need to be. There was a time in my life where, with all my trauma and my childhood experiences of violence and sexual harm and physical violence, all of that stuff, my surviving mechanism was to lie. I lied. I created many facades that I hid behind, built many walls. And it took one person, my wife, who seen past all this, acknowledged my upbringing, but was very clear in her boundaries of what love and having a relationship with her looked like. But it was just her seeing and acknowledging me, which really shattered those walls. And that what how that looked like was, I was sitting one time on the computer doing some work, and she came and sat next to me, and she asked me a simple question, why do you lie? And of course, my typical response was the answer with a lie. So I don't lie. What are you on about? Still typing away, and she just sat there gently. Wasn't trying to invade my space, but was just curious. Why do you lie? And then, yeah, obviously I lied, saying I don't lie. And then she started listing out, scenarios that I obviously lied, and I just sat there and then started crying.
Yeah.
And I said, "Why are you my friend?" She goes, "I love you, but you don't have to lie to me. I love you beyond the lying. You don't have to keep surviving with me. Now you can live."
Mm.
And it was that one question, an empowering question of why do you lie, changed my life really. And it was that was healing. It was love. That's what love does to you. It heals.
Yeah. And hearing you talking before, like when you were 15, some of that was learning to love yourself too, wasn't it?
Definitely.
That actually,
Definitely.
before Sarah came along, you had to step up and go, actually, I'm going to choose to love myself.
Yep.
There's a quote from Isaac Rowe, who's a anger management specialist. He says, "I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her real name was grief."
Mm.
And you say similar things in your book. You say that anger goes by other names. Do you want to, again, just tell us a little bit about how you came to that and what does that mean for you and for the guys that you encounter?
Yeah, I definitely. I love that quote. I definitely believe anger masquerades itself, hiding a lot of other emotions that society hasn't really encouraged men to feel.
Mm.
Um, and I think a lot of men are disappointed. A lot of men, like around this time during COVID and the lockdown, a lot of people are stressed. Financials, work. Will they have a job after this? How can they pay the bills? And so that then opens us up to feeling inadequate, not good enough, and all these emotions. It may trigger memories of the past. My dad didn't show up to my rugby game, so you know now COVID, I've lost. I'm not working. I can't provide for my family. I'm no good. I'm a failure, and that leads to shame. So there's so many feelings that we feel, but anger just seems like a more powerful expression of outlet for us. We can feel it. We can use it to action what we want to do, but sometimes we struggle to sit there with these other feelings of feeling inadequate, feeling disappointed, and underneath all that is grief. I believe the emotion sitting behind anger, majority of the time, is grief. Right? If you track everything down, I'm disappointed, I failed. You keep going down the layers. Grief sits right at the bottom. And I've just, for myself, I've had to sit there and do this work of myself. What is it I'm feeling? If my wife says no to me, why do I feel disappointed? Why am I reacting instead of responding over her saying no? And heaps of our arguments come from, stupid little things like,
Yeah.
what direction we're going to go home.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
say, this way's faster, going left is faster, love. And she's like, no, I want to go right. And just her saying no to me then, sparks off an argument. I clearly know that, going left is going to be faster than the way home. She's like, what, by a minute, but I want to go right. And so it's in the no that you then start asking yourself questions. Why am I reacting like this? Is it
Yeah.
because I don't like being told no, or someone said no to me in the past or as a child and it hurt? Or I feel not acknowledged or respected because my timing's on point. I know the fastest way home, so you
Yeah.
don't believe me.
Yeah.
There's so many things there we can discover and have to navigate through. And so that's what I mean in the book when we're talking about um, anger. Sits at the top and hides us. I believe anger is a secondary emotion. There's a whole host of emotions sitting underneath anger.
What have you seen, like when you've been working with guys and this kind of discussion has come up about anger, about what else is lying behind it? Has that been something that guys get?
Yes, when you communicate it, what comes from the heart connects to the heart. And
Yeah.
so I always try and simplify things because sometimes you're communicating not with a grown man in front of me, especially the guys in my chair. I realize that sometimes I'm not talking to a 40-year-old man. I'm talking to the 10-year-old boy who never knew
Yeah.
how to regulate a situation that he went through, and is trying to help them and then reinterpret that feeling of disappointment or grief to them. It wasn't your fault. Mum and dad were trying their best, or mum and dad were moving from house to house because they were struggling, or
Mm.
you know, there's so many reasons why things happen to us, and so it's just helping people to reinterpret that and then reparent themselves, or
Yeah.
you help reparent them. Something me and my wife have, I love me and my wife love each other, and so we're always on that journey of reparenting each other. We had parents who, my parents, they lived on um, reaction mode instead of responding. And so me and my wife have had to reparent. My wife's reparented me and how I raise my kids. Like, let's be gentle with our kids. You don't have to yell at them all the time just because he broke a jar.
Yeah.
It was an accident.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah.
Yeah. Something you've mentioned a bunch of times already today is shame. And you say at one point in the book that it wasn't the pain from the physical abuse that was destroying you, it was the intense shame that you were feeling. How do you see the same story playing out in the lives of the men in your chair?
It's the thing for me. It's trauma. Trauma has multiple manifestations. And as I said before, the definition I love the most is from Gaba Mate. Trauma isn't what happens to you, but what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. And so these feelings just linger there, harbor in our body, and we carry it with us until our adulthood. If you've never learned how to regulate them or navigate your way around them, and most of us kids don't, and so you see it manifest. This trauma can manifest in countless ways, addiction, self-medication, violence, and one of the most crippling ones is shame. A lot of people carry shame, and so I believe, when you're facing someone who is traumatized, in my experience, there are various factors that can actually make a difference. And one of the most important ones I have encountered for myself is empathy.
Mm.
Empathy has made a difference in my life and in the lives of people I've had the privilege of knowing and walked
Mm.
alongside. Someone with empathy knows how to listen, to hear,
Mm.
how to see through all the facades, the masks and the pain and be with you without judgment. As I was saying about my wife when she told me, why do you lie?
Mm.
It seems so simple, but yet so overlooked. But I truly believe, empathy is so transformative. You
Mm.
know, this is the ability to understand and listen without a rolled out recipe to do list.
Mm.
Because I think when people are just trying to survive, it's difficult to even consider transformation. Think about that in your own life when your back is against the wall, um, and you felt at rock bottom with no options. You aren't thinking about transformation, but survival. And so childhood trauma mixed with economic pressures, class systems, prejudice, and systemic racism, hard relationships all play a part as an adult trying to navigate through that trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. And something I found reading the book, um, I guess I expected to kind of be reading it thinking about how this book would benefit other people because I didn't grow up in a house where there was abuse. I grew up in a very stable home and a very loving home, and yet I found myself resonating with all your discussions around trauma, around shame, because actually I've had trauma and shame as well. It's just in different ways.
Yes.
I am still battling with some mental health challenges that come from experiencing trauma as a kid, and
Mm,
it took me 30 years from the trauma to realize that's what it was. That was behind a lot of the way that I did certain things and things that had affected our marriage. A bunch of
mm,
those things. So, and of course, wrapped up, like you say, around that trauma is often shame. I mean, throw in religion as well. Um, that can bring a lot of shame too, because
yep.
you're not the good perfect boy that you're supposed to be. You're doing things that are quote unquote wrong. Um, and yeah, I think one of the best changes in my life is starting to see things less about right and wrong and seeing them more as about healthy versus unhealthy. And that's what I picked up a lot in your book, was not, you weren't berating guys for doing things that were wrong as much as you were inviting them into a space that was more healthy, which, yeah, just spoke volumes to me.
Thank you, bro.
You celebrated your wedding anniversary yesterday, so
Yes.
congratulations on that.
In lockdown.
And yeah, and sorry that you aren't currently overseas celebrating that like you were supposed to be. But one bit that really touched me in your book, you said when you were sort of first considering letting Sarah deep into your life, you said, if I invited her into my heart to walk places no one else had ever been invited into, she was someone who would take her shoes off at the door and tread carefully. She seems like a pretty awesome person to have in your corner.
She is. She's the love of my life. She's an amazing. I get emotional when I think of just who she is to me. Um, she's a remarkable human, and so grateful, so thrilled that I get to do life with my best friend. Oh, get emotional about it. Far out.
I think one of the things I loved about the way that you portray her in your book is that you don't put her up as some perfect wife who saved you. And in fact, the opposite of that. You put her as someone who's in your corner, cheering you on to do the work yourself.
Yeah. She is a woman. She is a boundaried woman. She's a
Yeah,
definition of boundaries. Like, I ain't doing this shit for you. I love you. I'm here cheering you on. Happy to walk alongside you. But you need to check your ass into therapy or talk to someone about your struggles, because that's not mine to
yeah,
carry. And so, yeah. And I've always loved that about her. She's not my rehab, but she's my home.
yeah,
She's safe. I can just be and talk about whatever I'm feeling or whatever I'm struggling with, and I'm not shamed or judged. She's there supporting me, but she's not doing. She's not going to do the work for me. She can't. It's not sustainable for either of us. And so, yeah, very grateful to my wife.
awesome. And just to finish off, what is it that brings you hope?
What brings me hope? A lot of things bring me hope. When you're in this work, when you're in this sector of family violence, and you're dealing with people who are traumatized and often not in the conversation of you know just in the conversation in general. men who struggle silently. What gives me hope is when they change the narrative, when they show up for themselves in a way of showing up for their kids. Um, so many things give me hope.
Mm.
Seeing men um, now in their kids' lives, not necessarily in the kids' mothers' lives, but men who are actually making effort and working and staying away from um, prison, and not just men who have been in prison, but guys who are just now, you know, being present with their kids,
Yeah.
and I so beautiful when you receive messages from women, thanking me, and I get bottles of wine at the barbershop from partners saying, my husband's he's present now, he's there, we can have conversations. Those things give me hope, um, and so yeah, I lean into that. Me and my wife always say, the seeds that we plant today, we may never eat the fruit from, and we won't, but we do it because we believe our children's children will. We have to dream for a violence-free Aotearoa, a violence-free world, because that's what we're all working towards.
Mm.
And so yeah,
Awesome. What does the future hold for Mataio Brown?
the future. Oh man, we have so many. We've got so much work. We've been currently working on an online program for men with healing. And so
Cool.
it's just we just want healing to be accessible. Why does it have to cost so much money for people to heal?
Mm.
At the end of the day, our children are suffering,
Yeah.
if men can't access healing. And so we've partnered up with the government. We have this idea that we're creating all this content online for men who are struggling with violence, suicide, depression.
Mm.
And this online program will be accessible for men.
Cool.
Um, and it's going to have real people and real stories, real tools, insights, and how people overcome. And I think this will change the system approach. It's a very holistic approach, but it will help our mental health system, because it's our mental health system is not doing well.
Yeah.
Um, that we've got a few projects we're working. I'm still working in the barbering industry. I'm getting back into education, and we're creating an online forum for that. Um, my wife is a busy
Mm.
person. She's doing her counselling degree, um, and so we're also working on. I can't say too much, but we're
Mm.
working with someone international, creating a dramatized series of the book.
That's exciting.
So a very well known director. So that is exciting.
Yeah.
But it's all in the works. So I mean, it takes a few years to get that up and running.
Yeah.
You've got to write the script and all that stuff. But there's been a lot of interest since the books come out, and that's just opened up so many doors, so many opportunities. And so we're just trying to, I still want to be a family man, and my kids and my family are a priority, and so um, trying to keep the balance. And so, but people always ask us that question, how do you guys do everything that you guys are doing? Um, but for us, it's simple. Like our kids are part of our work. We want to show. We want to show. I'm sick of the narrative that men are useless. Men are pitiful. They don't show up and all this stuff. And so we want to show a different window. The whole book is a whole different window. We
Yeah.
want people to see a different window to life, and that it is possible to change the narrative. And so, doing this mahi with my wife, and having our kids with us, when we go in and hold wānanga and hold conferences for people, I often take my kids, and just how I am with my kids, men are always touched. Like, man, like you're just so gentle. You let your kids just
Mm.
run about. I'm like, they're kids,
Yeah.
like um, but you're so gentle in the way you communicate with your wife. Like, it's so you guys are equal, and so that's what we want to do. We want to show people what a healthy relationship actually looks like, and it's possible to be everything that you've always dreamed of, and to change the narrative despite your upbringing and your trauma.
Oh, thanks so much for spending time with us today. Thank you for your book. It is a really amazing book.
Thank you so much, bro.
To be honest, I had to only read a chapter at a time to start with because it was pretty full on. But it was something that I needed to read, and I think, like I said, I think it will be amazingly helpful for those guys that you had in mind when you were writing it. But I think that this book would be helpful for anyone, to be honest.
Thank you, bro.
Just speaking to that space inside of us that needs to grow, that needs to heal from whatever's happened to us in the past. So, yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for just being so vulnerable and encouraging other men to be vulnerable too. It's a kind of a beautiful ripple that's going out from you into others and then being replicated. So, yeah, thank you for what you're doing to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
Thank you, Andy, bro. Appreciate it.
Hello, hello, heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
Such a powerful kōrero with such a humble guy. It's like empathy just oozes from Matt's bones. There was so much in there to be encouraged by and to be challenged about. And one of the biggest things for me hearing Matt is seeing the power that there is in love. Love of yourself, love of others who stick by you, who ask you the hard questions because they care. Love of those who walk beside you as you do the hard work needed for healing. So Matt, here is a blessing for you. May your barbershops continue to be known as places of conversation, vulnerability, and healing. And may all who enter them leave knowing that they are seen and they are heard. May the adventure you are on continue to excite you with possibilities, and may you find even more ways to share your kaupapa with the world in ways that make a difference. May your skill with the tools of your trade continue to develop and grow. Yes, clippers and razors, but more importantly, your listening ears and your empathetic heart. And as they do, may you see more and more men stepping into lives of freedom, love, and healing, and more women finding love in the arms of their partners rather than fear. May your children know how loved they are, and how blessed they are that their dad has done everything in his power to break cycles of violence and abuse. And may your future mokopuna be fruit of the generationally changed narrative that you are leaving as a legacy. May you and Sarah continue to know and be known by one another, forever learning, growing, reparenting, celebrating, cherishing, and journeying together. May your relationship flourish as you live in ways that show others that a life of love and companionship is possible, no matter what has happened to them in the past. And may others continue to be blessed as the love in your relationship spills outward to all you encounter. Thanks to Strahan for the music and Rangi for the karakia. Join me next time when I talk to Dylan Jones from For Good Media about how he is harnessing his love of film and story to tell stories that need to be heard and make a difference in the world. Until then, me inoi tātou.
E tō mātou matua I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tau mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Homai kia mātou ai nei, he taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā. Muro mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga, e hara ana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia. Engari whakaorangi a mātou,